guys, my name is Lily and today I want to build a 24 volt solar system for my cousin David. My cousin lives at the countryside, he has a homestead, and actually I already have started building a 24 volt system for him, but back then I have put all of the components on a simple board. And then we wanted to get a metal cupboard, but we could not find a cheap one. And here in Europe the metal cupboards are really expensive. So the good quality ones would cost like 600 euros. And then I thought, well, instead of having a stationary solar system, I had the idea of putting a solar system into a cart. So now he can take this cart here and move it around the property where he has several buildings. He can use the solar system at his barn or at his other barn or at his garage where he has a few refrigerators, or he can take it into his house. And that's really awesome, and I really like this idea of having a mobile solar system, because let's say in an SHTF situation, if he has to leave his homestead for some kind of reason, which I hope never happens, but if there's a need to leave the homestead, he can just take this thing, put it into a car and then go and bug out. Now another great thing is that the company SOC was so nice to offer to donate one of their batteries to this project here. So this is a really nice present for my cousin David and he will love it. He doesn't know yet that he will be getting such a really high quality battery, so it's going to be a huge surprise. And SOC batteries are one of the best on the market, so I am really stoked that my cousin will soon get this battery together with all of this solar system here, and he will totally love it. So now let's take a closer look at this battery here, which is especially made for 24 volts solar systems. Alright, so this is the SOC battery that I want to use for this project, and as you can see, this is especially made for 24 volt system. And actually the battery has a little bit more than 24 volts. It's 25.6 volts times 100 amp hours equals 2560 watt hours. So that's a pretty massive battery, and actually with this battery you can run a freezer for 3 days and a freezer for 4 days. So it has a lot of capacity. Now it's made from lithium iron phosphate, which is the #1 battery chemistry, because first of all it has a really long lifetime, 4,000 to 7,000 cycles. Also lithium iron phosphate is very hard to catch fire in case it's getting damaged. So yeah, in terms of chemistry, battery chemistry, it's the safest one that you can get. Then here, as you can see, it comes with a metal casing, really sturdy black paint. And here you have some handles at both of the sides here. Then here we have some really high quality lugs, and I really like them. And I think it's really important that it comes out over the battery so you can easily attach some wires, because sometimes the battery casing is going up like this, it makes a corner like that, and then you cannot come in with the cables from all of the sides. So these are really nice studs here and of very high quality. You can see that they have used 4 screws to screw down the terminal, so nothing is going to rattle here. Okay, now I want to open up the battery to show you the inside of this bad boy. And I really like that you can easily open up the cover without destroying it, so you can make repairs like exchanging the BMS or a cell. Alright, so this is the inside of the battery. Now here on top you can see a high quality BMS. If this is getting damaged, you can always exchange it. Here you can see the connection to the terminals, really high quality. The cable that they have used has a diameter of 7 gauge. And here is the cable which is balancing all of the battery cells. So as you can see, we are using 8 battery cells, somewhere there has to be a temperature sensor. Oh yeah, it's this one here. So it sits right here at the side. So if the temperature drops below a certain value, 0 degrees Celsius, then the BMS is disconnecting the battery cells from getting charged. And this is really important because that's probably the only downside with LiFePO4 batteries. You cannot charge them when it's below freezing. But other than that, this is a high quality build. You can see all of the terminals are nice and the connections are professionally made. So yeah, really nice work done by the company SOC. Now, besides having a low temperature cutoff, so when it's getting too cold, it's going to protect the batteries, it also has a high temperature cutoff. Then in addition to the temperature protection, it also protects the battery against overcharging, over discharging, and also it has a overcurrent protection and a short circuit protection. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, this cable here, this is an auto balancing cable, so all of the batteries will get charged the same. Now you can see you can take off this black metal here, which is holding down these cells, and in case one of the cells breaks, you can easily take it out and yeah, swap it out with another one, and that's really cool. So pretty awesome build, and I like that they have made it in a way so that you can repair the battery. Okay, so I closed back up the lid, and because of the fact that this is a repairable battery, the company SOC can offer a 7 years warranty, which is amazing. I've never seen that with other companies that produce batteries. And if you take care of your battery, it can last from 4,000 to 8,000 life cycles, which is amazing. Okay, so now let's check out the other specs of this battery. So we have 2,560 watt hours, which is pretty amazing. Self-discharge is 3% per month. Then you can charge this battery with 50 amps, but actually for a longer lifetime it's better if you charge it with 20 amps only, so in 5 hours it will be full, and this way you will get most of the lifetime out of it. Then next, you can connect up to 4 batteries of these in a series, so that's really good. For our project we only need 1 battery, but if you want to make a big off-grid solar system for your house, then you can connect up to 4 batteries. Next, here we can see that you can discharge the battery with 100 amps. That's pretty powerful. And for peaks, it can also for a short time do more than this, 200 amps. But then the BMS will cut off the current at 330 amps after 6 to 16 milliseconds. Now next, you should not discharge the battery more than down to 22.4 volts. That's really important if you want to get more lifetime out of your battery. If you don't disconnect the battery when the voltage is going below that point, the BMS is going to cut off the voltage at 20.8 volts. And it's going to reconnect at 23.2 volts. Yeah, it also has a short circuit protection, which kicks in at 200 to 500 microseconds. Then here's the temperature that you can use with this battery. So discharging is possible from -20 to +60. But charging, you have to watch out that you don't charge the battery underneath freezing, which is 0 degrees Celsius. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It is weighing 25 kilograms and the terminal type is M8. So that's also important to know if you want to attach some lugs. And yeah, that's it for the battery. I have to say I'm really happy with the quality of this battery, and we are very thankful that the company SOC is donating this to my cousin. Awesome. Okay, so this is the card that we are using. It's really cheap, only cost 100 euro. The box here cost about 50 euro, as I said before, and I already prepared all of the holes. So now we are going to install all of the components of the solar system. So first of all, I want to use this XT90 connector. This is actually a built-in connector, which is going to go right here at the side. Okay, so this is where we will come in with the solar cables. And then next we need a solar disconnect, which I have in this box here. And this here has 20 amps. So it should do fine for the solar panels, which have around 14 amps. And he can connect two in a series and the amps will stay the same. So this 20 amp breaker should be good for the solar panels. If it's breaking too early, then we can always switch this one out with a stronger one. But in general, you should size your breaker or fuse or any other safety device 25% bigger than the actual current that you are getting in. So now in general, you should always size your breakers or fuses 25% bigger than the actual current. So let's say we have 14 amps and we multiply that by 25%. So that's 17.5 amps. And the next bigger size breaker is 20. So it should be fine for our project. So anyways, this is going right here in the corner. And the cables are going to go into the hole. Now before we mount anything, I first want to solder on some wires onto the XT90 connector. Okay, so while the iron is warming up, I want to show you this chart here. It's by the company Blue Sea Systems, and it's going to show you how thick the wire is going to have to be if you're transporting a certain amount of ampere. And in our case, the solar panels, no matter if my cousin David uses one or two in a series, it's not going to exceed 15 amps. And if we stay in this column, and let's say the solar panels are 6 meters away, then we can attach a 10 gauge cable to them. And 10 gauge is 6 square millimeters in metric. So now here in Europe we are using the metric system, and this here is a chart for Austrian electricians, and it's going to tell you what size of fuse or breaker you can use with a certain thickness of wire. And this is different columns because it really depends on how the cable is installed. If it's inside of a wall, you need much thicker cables because it's getting warm easier. But for example, if it's installed in the air or in the soil, or if it's only touching one wall, then the cable thickness it can be smaller for a certain type of breaker. So for a 6 square millimeter cable, the maximum fuse or breaker you can use is 40 amps. And our breaker right now is 20 amps, so this is more than fine. Okay, and with these two diagrams you can do some proper wire sizing, and this way you should not get hot cables or burning cables in the worst case. Alright, so now I want to show you how you can solder the XT90 connector. So first of all, you want to plug the male and female part together. Because if something deforms due to the heat that we are applying, both of the ends are going to deform. Otherwise you cannot use the plug anymore if one is deformed and the other one is not. Okay, next, as a first step, we are heating up the terminals of the XT90 connector. And then I am applying some solder to the inside here, like so. And we do this to all of the 4 connections. Okay, so this is the outside of the box. This is where it goes to the solar panels, 6 square millimeters. But I have run out of 6 square millimeter wire. And what I had at home is a little bit thicker of a cable. This is 10 square millimeters and it barely fits the XT90 connector. So it's almost too big, but it's still okay. Really nice. Okay, so when you're using the shrink tube, you want to make sure that this is in all the way. You don't want to see any blank solder or metal of the connector. So there's a groove and you can go inside of here. And this way, there's no way that this short circuits. Now when you're using a lighter, the shrink tube will shrink in length too. So you have to make sure that you apply a little bit pressure towards the terminal. I shrink the front first while applying some forward pressure onto the shrink tube. Okay, anytime you're connecting wires to a solar disconnect like this one here, you really want to use some peripherals, because without them, it happened to me very often that the wires are coming back out. So this is what I'm doing with my wires now. I'm just taking the ferrules, make sure that all of the strands go inside like this, and then take your crimper and put it on. Now we can connect the cables to our solar disconnect. So this is where the solar panels connect, and now we continue the build at the inside. Okay, next I want to show you my solar charge controller. This is the MPPT solar charge controller by the company APO-1, and it's a tracer which can deliver 40 amps, so it's the biggest model of this series. And the maximum input power coming from the PV is 1040 watts at 24 volts. So that's quite a huge solar array. So if I stick this in here, this should be just long enough. Awesome. Now we need to attach two wires here, which will lead to the battery, but in between we also need another breaker. Okay, so the breaker that I want to use in between the solar charge controller and the battery switch is this one here. It's a thermal circuit protector with 50 amps. So usually to size a breaker, you size it 25% bigger than your actual amperage. So 40 amps is what we get from the solar charge controller times 1.25 is 50 amps, and this is what I'm using here. Alright, so now for the connection from the solar charge controller to the thermal breaker, I'm going to use a 16 square millimeter cable again. This one is already crimped, and then for this side I'm going to use a ferrule. This metal tube is going to keep all of the strands of wire together, so that if you push it into the solar charge controller, all of the wires go into the same hole, because it can happen that one strand goes to the side like this, and then you would have a short, and then you would risk a burn. So we want to use these ferrules for safety reasons. So you want to put it on like this, make sure that all of the strands are inside, and then crimp it. One more crimp here. Okay, that's it. So now this end goes into the slot where it says battery. Okay, now we want to connect the same wire to my thermal breaker, which I've already mounted on a piece of wood. So now we take off the screw here. Okay, I'm going to install the switch first. I want to have it right here at the side. Also here, there's going to be connected the battery, and then here there will be the inverter coming in. But now let's install this positive bus bar. Okay, now we need a connection from here to here. All right, this is looking awesome. So now we have a connection from the solar charge controller to the thermal circuit protector to a positive bus bar and to a really strong switch. All right, so now I want to install a display for the solar charge controller, and this is called the MT50. Okay, next we need a small battery monitor. And this one is cheap and also round, so it's really easy to install. So there's going to be two electric sockets right here. Also, the battery is going to be in the frame. And then I have to install this inverter somewhere here in the air. So if you take a look at the label here at the back side, you can see that you have to install it upwards and not sideways. So you cannot install it sideways to the wall, because with the vibrations that's going on, all of the electric parts, they could bend down when they are getting hot. So this is why you can only install the inverter like this, and it's going to sit here in the air above the battery. But before we can install the inverter and the battery, I first have to install this box here, which is going to contain the breaker for the 230 volt side of the inverter. Okay, I've just wired my breaker box and it looks like this. It looks a little bit complicated, so I'm going to explain it with this drawing here. So the thing is that the network coming from inverters is an IT network. That's a little bit different than the one that you are used to from the general households, right? So here the problem is that the phase and neutral is not really defined, and also you're not getting a true ground from an inverter, right? So we have to make a ground, and we have to change the network from IT to TN, and only this way the RCT is going to work. So now we are not getting an earth from the inverter, so how do we wire this thing? So here's what I did. So I have a cable coming from the inverter, and this is the black cable here. So this is going to get plugged into the inverter, right? And then I have two more wires going out of the breaker box. Those are the white wires, and those are going to connect to the socket. So now we have three wires coming from the inverter, the blue one, and this one goes right into here, into the RCD, and then it comes out here on the bottom. Then we go back up here, and then here I have installed a Vago clamp. So these are really great clamps by the company Vago, and you can use it both with single strand wire but also multi-strand wire, and it's really safe and very effective and fast. So I really like those clamps. Now, because we want to make a TN network, so we need a earth wire. We want to use an earth wire and go into the same socket as the neutral. Okay, I hope you can see the yellow. So that's the earth wire, and also here I've used a Vago clamp. So next we want to create a bridge from here going to the breakers. So this time I have two breakers, 1 and 2, because I have 2 sockets and I want to secure each of the sockets with 1 breaker. And that's why I have made this bridge here using the brown wire. And now I've connected the 2 cables coming in from the sockets. So I'm taking the brown wire and I'm going to the breaker. And here I do the same with the second wire. And then I'm taking the blue wire from socket number 1 and I connect it to the Vago clamp. And I do the same thing with the second socket. So now all of the neutral wires are connected. And last but not least, I'm also connecting all of the earth wires to the Vago clamp with the new earth that we have created from the RCD. Right, so that's about it. It seems complicated, but actually it's not. So the RCD is important, and this is going to save your life. The breaker is going to be important. This is going to protect the wires, the conductors, and this is going to prevent your house burning down. Okay, hold on a second. I forgot one cable. Of course, we also need to connect the inverter to here, to the RCD. Oh yeah, and there's one more thing. There's one more cable coming from the inverter. It's another ground cable, but because the inverter is not giving out a true ground, I just taped it off. So I just tucked it to the side here because you're not going to need it because we have made a new ground wire. So this wire here, this just is not in use, okay? So now we take our breaker box and install it in our solar generator.